The early morning sun cut through the mist that hung over the small-town shooting range. It was the sort of place where old veterans and weekend hobbyists came to show off their rifles, sip bad coffee, and argue about who could still hit a moving target at 50 yards. For them, it was a social ritual, a way of keeping the past alive. For Emily Harper, however, the range was just a distraction, as something to keep her mind busy when the quiet nights grew too heavy with memories. Emily, once a decorated Army sniper, had returned home 2 years ago after multiple tours overseas. She bore the weight of those years in her steady gaze, the slight stiffness in her shoulders, and the way she scanned every environment without thinking. Her hair, once tied in tight military buns, now fell loosely to her shoulders. Civilians saw a quiet woman who kept mostly to herself. What they didn't see were the scars under her sleeves or the medals tucked away in a drawer she never opened. That Saturday morning, she walked into the shooting range with her worn leather case slung over one shoulder. Inside was an old but reliable M24 sniper rifle, the same kind she'd carried in combat. For her, it wasn't a hobby, it was a connection to a life that had demanded everything from her and given back very little. The regulars at the range, mostly older men who had never served or who had only seen combat in movies, noticed her immediately. Some gave polite nods, others smirked. Emily was used to it. A woman at a range always seemed to attract more commentary than a man ever would. But that morning, the commentary turned sharp. "Hey sweetheart," one of the gray-bearded regulars called out as she unpacked her rifle at the far bench. "You lost?" "The knitting club's down the street." His buddies laughed. Emily ignored him, adjusting her scope. She had dealt with worse. She had heard it all before. Too fragile, too small, too soft. She'd proven them wrong on the battlefield more times than she cared to count. But the taunts kept coming. "You sure you can handle that thing?" another man said, tapping his own chest proudly. "Takes more than a steady hand to hit a target. Honey, why don't you let the real shooters handle this?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't reply. She breathed in, the way she always did before taking a shot, letting the noise around her fade. But before she could line up her sights, one of the men stepped closer. "Come on, darling, don't take it so seriously," he said, grinning. "Why don't you show us what you got?" 10 targets lined up over there. "Bet you $100 you can't hit them all in under a minute." Emily's lips curved into the faintest smile, not because she was amused, but because something in her stirred an old, quiet fire that had been sleeping too long. She closed the bolt on her rifle and said simply, 10 seconds. The group broke into laughter. One even slapped his knee, shaking his head. 10 seconds? Lady, you'd be lucky to hit 3 in that time. She stood, moving toward the open range where 10 steel plates had been set at various distances, some close, some far, one nearly obscured by brush. To anyone else, it looked nearly impossible. To her, it was muscle memory. "Timer ready?" she asked calmly. One of the men pulled out his phone, still chuckling. "Sure thing. Don't cry when you miss, sweetheart." Emily didn't answer. She stepped into position, feet planted, rifle steady. Her breathing slowed, her heartbeat settled. The world around her disappeared. All that remained were the targets. She lowered her cheek to the stock, finger brushing the trigger. Go. The first shot cracked, echoing across the valley. A steel plate rang out. The second shot followed instantly. Then the third. To the watching men, it was a blur, the rifle kicking back, the bolt snapping, her movements so fast and fluid it seemed impossible. Her eyes never wavered. Each target fell in perfect rhythm, her pace unbroken. 10 shots in under 10 seconds. 10 hits. The timer beeped, confirming it. Silence followed. Emily lowered her rifle, her face unreadable. The men stood frozen, their laughter strangled in their throats. The one who had made the bet swallowed hard, staring at the plates, then at her. "You how the hell?" he stammered. "Years of practice," Emily said softly, packing her rifle with practiced precision. The group exchanged stunned looks. No one laughed now. The arrogance that had filled the air had vanished, replaced with something else, a respect, and a trace of shame. But the story didn't end there. Word of Emily's performance spread fast. Within a week, videos surfaced online. Someone had recorded the moment, shaky but undeniable. 10 targets, 10 seconds, no misses. Comments poured in. Some praised her skill, others doubted it was real. A few veterans recognized her stance, her discipline, and knew immediately what she was. Reporters began calling, but Emily turned them all down. She hadn't done it for fame or recognition, she just wanted peace. Still, peace never lasts long when the world decides you're something extraordinary. A month later, the range hosted a charity competition to raise money for veterans. Dozens of shooters from across the state came, including Emily. She hadn't planned to participate, but after being approached by a young Marine struggling with PTSD, she decided to enter for him, for the ones who still carried invisible battles inside them. The announcer introduced her, his voice booming through the loudspeakers. Emily Harper, Army veteran, sniper, decorated for service in Afghanistan. A ripple of surprise ran through the crowd. Many had come expecting a spectacle, a woman who might embarrass herself. Instead, they got a soldier who had once guarded lives from rooftops and ridges. The competition was brutal. Moving targets, shifting winds, timed shots. One by one, competitors fell behind. Emily remained calm, her breathing steady, her shots true. When the final round came, a grueling sequence of 15 targets at varying distances, she didn't hesitate. She moved through them with the same quiet precision, finishing with a time no one else came close to. The crowd erupted, veterans in the audience cheering the loudest. The same men who had once mocked her now stood at the back, silent, humbled. Afterward, the young Marine she'd spoken to earlier approached her, eyes bright. "Mama broken bar, you don't know what that meant. Seeing you out there, it makes me believe I can keep going too." For the first time in a long while, Emily felt something shift inside her. She had spent years trying to disappear, to bury her past, but maybe her skills, her story, weren't a burden. Maybe they were a way to remind others, especially those who had worn the uniform, of that strength comes in many forms, and that no one had the right to tell them what they could or couldn't do. As she left the range that evening, her rifle slung over her shoulder, she passed by the men who had mocked her weeks before. They didn't jeer this time, they didn't dare. Instead, one of them gave a small nod, his voice quiet. "Respect, ma'am." Emily returned the nod, her lips curving into the faintest smile. She didn't need their respect, but maybe, just maybe, they needed to give it. And somewhere deep down, in that place where her soldier's fire still burned, she knew this was only the beginning.